Dumber than Skywarp? I'll show you, dumb Starscream!
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Studio Series War for Cybertron Voyager class Decepticon Skywarp, which alongside Optimus Prime and Ratchet is really looking to be one of the better entries into the gamer edition. And as we directly compare him against his actual in-game character render, he appears to be incredibly close. So as we check out the details, to my surprise, the faceplate is actually completely brand new, this time sporting the iconic Seeker smirk, although that right eye still be looking kinda sus.
Be careful, Ben!
Now, despite this guy definitely being one of the better entries, he unfortunately isn't completely flawless. For example, I still think that cockpit is a little too clunky, even in comparison to the original Fall of Cybertron Deluxe. But easily my biggest complaint would have to be the paint apps. These are slacking, especially when it comes down to the lower legs, even in comparison to what we did see from Starscream, which honestly is a pretty big shame because the back of this guy is looking immaculate. Now, this here is your main point of view during gameplay, so it's brilliant to see just how spot on they got this. Not to mention that this guy is also stacked. He's near enough been filled in front side to back with little to no hollow spaces in sight. And as we check out his accessories, up first we do see the return of the Thermo rocket launcher, which has been brilliantly detailed and definitely does match what we see in the video game. Now, in addition to being used as both a handheld and inbuilt weapon, this is packing a total of 4 blast effect ports, meaning that it should have no issues in annihilating those Autobots on the Cybertronian battlefield. And seeing as this guy's a Voyager, he also includes an additional handheld weapon, this time in the form of this Energon Battle Mace. Now, as cool as these accessories are, I've got to be honest and say, guys, I don't think these will be beating anytime soon the null rays as seen with that original Fall of Cybertron Deluxe class, because once combined, those bad boys were sick. Now, checking out Skywarp's posability, this is the one area that I can say with absolute ease that he sweeps the original. So to begin with, the head, in addition to being able to look both up and down, can also be spun side to side. The shoulders can kick forwards and backwards and they're up to the side. The bicep can spin and the elbow is packing not 1 but 2 points of articulation, which is awesome. The wrist can rotate, and due to the way this has been constructed, there is no visible mushroom peg on the underside, which I thought was sick. Despite packing an overly large cockpit, the waist can be spun both side to side, which up until fairly recently wasn't always a given for a Seeker mold. The hips can kick forwards and backwards as well as they're out to the side. The thigh can spin and the knee can bend slightly past 90, which really allows you to get this guy into some pretty dynamic poses. And then finally, the ankle can hinge inwards, and check out that inbuilt gap filler. But at this point, I'm sure you guys all know the drill. Let's now put him through the pose test. Now, flying through some comparisons, we are starting things off big by whacking out the original Fall of Cybertron Deluxe Skywarp, who visually is causing for some tough competition. Although, when it comes down to which is the better Transformer to mess with, I think in this case, I'm gonna give it to the brand new Studio Series version. Because with the exception of the lack of paint, this Starscream mold has very quickly become one of my all-time favourites from the Gamer Edition, and it may just be right now, one of my favourite Seeker molds. Which, talking of, let's fly through some of the more recent Skywarps, by starting off with the super elusive Transformers Siege version. The Earthrise Skywarp, and hands down the War for Cybertron version, absolutely wipes the floor with this, and to this day I still find it crazy that Starscream and the Seekers arguably received a better update in comparison to what is supposed to be the big bad leader of the Decepticons, Megatron. Although I will say it's pretty on par with Optimus Prime, as this was actually surprisingly really good. But I still just cannot decide whether or not it's Ratchet that ultimately comes out on top when it comes down to this Gamer Edition, and it is about to get even better with the upcoming release of Ironhide. To fly through 2 more, next up is Bumblebee, then finally Sideswipe, who, if rumours are to be true, is about to become the Autobot equivalent of the Decepticon Seeker, because this apparently will be retooled into the Autobot Soldier. Now, sliding into this guy's transformation, this is actually super unique. So for the first step, take a hold of these intakes and click these here inwards. You'll then take a hold of the shoulder and firstly, rotate this here upwards. You'll then take this second elbow joint and fold this here towards yourself. The next one will then fold upwards, so that right now this should be looking like this. Bang! So that Skywarp is then left with both of his arms in the air like he just don't care. Then what you'll do is spin around here to the back, where we are firstly going to take a hold of the wing, click this here forwards, and then you'll take this entire intake and proceed to extend this here downwards by making use out of this hinge joint. Bang! Once the second side's complete, we can then spin around here to the side, where we are now going to take the entire backpack and attach this here away from Skywarp's torso. Once that's complete, we can then take a hold of the middle section and pull this backwards. Now, stored on the inside is indeed the intakes of the jet mode, so make sure that you fully deploy those bad boys. We are then going to spin around here to the back, where we are now going to take these wings and flip these here upwards. So again, be sure to do the same here for the second side. You'll then take the remainder of the backpack and snap this back into its original configuration. For one final touch, when it comes down here to this section, you'll then take these back fins, slide these here down until these do eventually meet directly in the middle. You'll then spin back round here to the front of Skywarp, where we are now going to take a hold of that massive cockpit. You'll then want to grab a hold of this neck joint and pull this here forwards. Now, as we turn this guy here to the side, there is also a second pin joint that you'll also want to fully extend. Once you reach this point, we can then take a hold of the head and spin this around by making use out of that ball joint. Now that's complete, we can then grab a hold of the torso and attach this here away from the skirt armor. Now once you reach to this point, again guys, spin here to the side, as stored on the inside is the nose cone. So thread this through until eventually this does really nicely meets up with that cockpit. You'll then want to take a hold of the entire head and the neck and slide this here backwards all of the way until eventually that nose cone can come up and over the top and will snap there into place. For the next step, take the entire chest and extend this here upwards and then make use out of these hinge joints. The shoulders will compress downwards and that tab will then eventually slide into this slot. So making use out of the bicep, snap that section into place, and again guys, be sure to do the same for the second side. The only difference being this time round is that these will then combine directly down the middle, and at this point you have now unlocked a mid-transformation girl walk mode. For the next step, take the front part of the foot and snap this here into the base and then swivel around here at the thigh. Now the aim of the game is for that slot to eventually end up into that tab. So take a hold of this trapdoor, swing this here forwards, and then what you'll do is bend backwards at the knee, really just to free the entire lower part of the leg away from that tab. What we can then do is take this part of the leg and push it in an opposite direction to the knee joint. Once that's then complete, we can straighten the knee back out and proceed to snap that section there into place. Then what you'll do is take a hold of the entire shin and begin shifting this here upwards. With that all said and done, again guys, be sure to do the same for that second side. Bang! Once that's complete, we can now turn to the side of Skywarp. So you are now going to take the entire backpack and slide these tabs into these tiny little slots. So grab a hold of that backpack and compress this here backwards until the legs are both locked into place. As one final finishing touch, you'll then want to take these tiny wings on either side and fold these here outwards until Skywarp is now fully transformed. Ripping his way through the Cybertronian battlefield, here we have Skywarp now fully transformed into his jet mode, and appearing to be fairly close to how he did appear in the game, although it's got to be said guys that the only thing really letting this guy down would have to be how large that cockpit is, even in comparison to the original 2012 Deluxe. But this has still been pretty decently detailed, even as we spin it around here to the back. This guy's packing a total of 2 blast effect ports, and as we spin him here to the underside, I actually think the kibble for the most part has been kept to a bare minimum. And as we check out the weapon storage, as always, that Energon mace doesn't look too aerodynamic, although this time round, complete with the thermo rocket launcher, Skywarp should have no issues in annihilating his enemies, even during flight. Now, flying through some jet mode size comparisons, we are starting off by bringing out the original Fall of Cybertron Deluxe Skywarp, which, to kind of go back to my earlier point, at least when in this mode, absolutely sweeps the brand new Studio Series version. The only time that I can think of where you may want to display the Studio Series release in its jet mode would be to stack it up alongside some of the other War for Cybertron Voyagers, such as the leader of the Seekers, Starscream. And with rumours that we are expected to see Thundercracker as early as next year, it's only a matter of time before the original trio is complete. Next up is the Transformers Siege Skywarp, who was based on the original Cybertronian Tetrajet design, and at least in this case, old is gold. Then finally, rounding these comparisons off with the Transformers Earthrise Skywarp, and I'm curious to know, out of all of the more recent versions of this character, which is the one you guys think is the best? So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Studio Series War for Cybertron Skywarp. Firstly, I've got to start off by saying that I really enjoy this mold. When it comes down to the Gamer Edition, I think this is by far one of the better updates that we've so far seen. And yes guys, I do know that he is packing a massive cockpit, but nearly a whole year on since the release of Starscream, I really can't say that bothers me all that much now. The only thing which I'm really bugged by would be the lack of paint apps when it comes down to the lower legs. These are most definitely slacking in comparison to what we did see from Starscream, which is a shame, as with the exception of a slightly modified head sculpt and a new accessory, this guy is exactly the same. I really don't think it would have been asking for too much for them to have at the very least match the paint apps that we did see on the original, I believe, 2012 Fall of Cybertron release. So taking all of that into consideration, I would really recommend for you guys to wait for this to go on clearance, because despite it being a really solid mold, if Starscream was anything to go by, then I think it will merely be only a matter of months before this guy is discounted. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this War for Cybertron Skywarp. Like myself, do you think this is one of the better molds to grace the Gamer Edition? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next review, transform and roll out!